Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Breaking news this week about the threat or threats to our nation's elections caused by the failure to make sure that non-citizens aren't registering in a substantial way to vote illegally in our elections. The Democratic governor of New Jersey was forced to admit, frankly, by the Department of Homeland Security, that they have at least 6,600 people registered to vote on their rolls who are not citizens. At least 400 of them voted in various elections. Here is the statement posted online, and I guess she had a little video statement as well from the new, I guess she's not new anymore, she's been there a little bit, Governor Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey. Last week I learned that a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the registration of roughly 6,000 people who indicated that they were not U.S. citizens between June 2023 and June 2024, almost 3 years prior to my taking office. So there you go, trying to avoid any responsibility. These individuals answered no when asked on a keypad whether they were a U.S. citizen when applying for driver's licenses and identification cards. But through no fault of their own, she alleges, the system registered them anyway. This happened under the previous administration. Again, don't blame her, right? And upon learning this information, I immediately ordered my chief counsel to launch an investigation to get to the bottom of what occurred. I also ordered the removal of any residents from our voter rolls who were erroneously added between June 2023 and June 2024. The new MVC administrator that I appointed has begun the process of replacing the vendor responsible for administering the system. According to the governor, our preliminary analysis shows fewer than 400 individuals who are newly registered for the first time because of the error voted. They were registered as Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters who were scattered across the state. No other details, right? And then she ends by complaining about how President Trump is trying to weaponize election security. This vindicates President Trump. It vindicates everyone else out there who's been concerned about non-citizens voting in our elections, because right now, all they need to do is say I'm not a citizen or I am a citizen, and that's the extent of the check. They don't ask for citizenship verification when someone registers to vote. That's got to change. And now you have the governor of New Jersey admitting that New Jersey has a system in place that essentially put people on the rolls who were getting driver's licenses irrespective of citizenship status. She calls it a glitch. I don't believe her. I don't believe we should believe anything we're hearing here. Indeed, the software company issued a statement. We have the statement here. As our friend John Solomon noted, based in France, IDEMIA works with the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission and has for more than 40 years to support the process through which eligible individuals may indicate their interest in registering to vote when applying for or renewing a driver's license or state-issued identification card. IDEMIA's role is to transmit information through the motor vehicle system. The voter registration information is transmitted to the New Jersey Department of State Division of Elections, which is ultimately responsible for verifying eligibility to vote. Information submitted by IDEMIA must still be validated and adjudicated by the Division of Elections. So they're saying it's not our fault. And given what happened here potentially implicates serious crimes at the federal level, I don't know enough about state law. This is a crisis for the people of New Jersey and Americans generally. And what the what should happen here is, in addition to what already has happened, the Justice Department, at least the Civil Rights Division, has commenced an investigation demanding access to who was registered, who voted, give us the details, and of course the New Jersey governor, because this is the left's tactics now, they don't want to cooperate with this investigation. If we're going to have an FBI, the FBI should be raiding offices throughout the state of New Jersey, in the capital certainly, to gain access to this information. Don't send letters, send FBI agents. Get the search warrants, get the subpoenas, do what is necessary and available under criminal law to investigate this in an emergency way. And I don't know why it hasn't been done yet. And of course, you know, the Trump administration was excoriated last week, we've talked about it here, for warning New Jersey and 3 other states they had likely tens of thousands of illegal aliens on the rolls. And this obviously is partly in response to that warning after attacking them for making the warning. So I exposed what was really going on here. In 2018, this is a tweet I issued, New Jersey leftists pushed through a change to the law that automatically registered to vote those applying for driver's licenses or renewing driver's licenses. It doesn't matter. Registering aliens to vote was a foreseeable consequence of this shady system, and a welcome one, I suspect, for the left. And I frankly, and as I note, if President Trump and his DHS hadn't called out what they found in New Jersey directly last week, we wouldn't know about any of this, and these aliens would still be illegally on the rolls and voting. And I find it extremely concerning and enlightening in a negative way that the New Jersey governor is withholding key information about what happened here. She says Republicans and Democrats voted and independents. They were all registered various parties. Well, tell us how they were registered across the parties. What elections did they vote in? She alleges, well, they didn't change the outcome of an election. Well, that's ridiculous. That's not the standard. We know there are hundreds of American citizens who had their votes negated up in New Jersey as a result of this abuse. So when you have these left-wing states automatically register people coming in to get a driver's license, at the same time giving illegals driver's licenses, what do you think is going to happen? This is going to happen. Now, Judicial Watch has launched several Freedom of Information and other government records requests to New Jersey about what went on there, because that's what we do, because we don't trust anyone else to get to the bottom of it. And as I said, what's frustrating to me is that the Justice Department should do more than send letters asking for records. They should be exercising the full authority under the law to conduct an immediate criminal investigation. This is an emergency situation, because their removal or their manipulation of records could be potentially a crime. Who knows? Obstruction of justice. And I think the numbers of illegal aliens, or I should say aliens illegally voting, because this is the issue. You've got tens of millions of non-citizens here in the United States, and it's kind of a numbers game. Or I shouldn't say, it's like a numbers analysis. A certain number of them will register to vote, both in a criminal way, meaning they know they can't register, or accidentally, like happened here. And of those, a certain percentage will vote. And there was a massive study, or important study, done a few years ago. I read about it in the Washington Post. Documenting the numbers are significant enough to, because aliens overwhelmingly vote for the left, by the way. So the illegal votes are usually for the left. they do change the outcome of elections, in addition to stealing your vote individually. So I issued this statement. I was, as I said, much less gray then. This is 7 years ago at this point. So I wrote, massive voter fraud. I estimate at least 900,000 aliens illegally voted in midterms. New numbers out of Texas and Pennsylvania suggest foreign nationals illegally voting in massive numbers. Voter ID and citizenship verification needed. So I really don't remember what the Texas and Pennsylvania numbers were about, but I still stand by that analysis back then for the 2018 election cycle. And since then, we've had the Biden invasion, so the numbers of non-citizens present in the United States have necessarily, as I note, made things, I think, worse. You can be sure, as I wrote, the number of foreign voters has only increased with the Biden invasion. I guess I should say the number of foreign voters has only increased with the Biden invasion, to get the grammar correct. So you could be sure things are worse. There's material online as I'm doing the video today showing that officials in Washington State were aware of voters who were not citizens being registered to vote at the DMV. So I'm convinced this is the tip of the iceberg. The numbers are enormous, but when it comes right down to it, no non-citizens should be registered to vote and voting. You know, the left says, well, they don't do it in large numbers, it's rare. Well, it's not that rare in New Jersey. 400 voting over years in how many elections? We don't know. 6,600 registered to vote? This lends urgency to the passage or to the necessity for the passage of the Save America Act. The House is trying to push it through again to the Senate. But if you're concerned about this issue of non-citizens voting, you need to get on the horn and let your senators know what you think about it. One way or another. I'm not telling you what to do or think or say. But if you're interested in sharing your views, whatever they are, with your senators, call 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. If the Senate has its way, they're going to shelve this again and disappear for 6 weeks. That's the plan if things go according to plan. Now they're going to pretend to consider it. But the only way this is going to get fixed, at least nationally, is with congressional intervention. And the president is right to highlight it as a priority and a crisis that needs to be addressed. New Jersey has proven that there is a crisis of non-citizens voting in our elections. And you can't trust these state officials to clean them up and stop it from happening. They've set up systems in place to encourage and invite this type of misconduct, illegality, and destruction of your right, your civil right, to have your vote not be negated by voter fraud, by non-citizen voting. The left is obsessed with this issue. There's a reason they don't want citizenship verification, because it gets in the way of people who are illegally voting for them. And there's no other reason, there's no other legitimate reason. I mean, they pretend it's too hard to figure out if you're a citizen or not and provide the proof. That's just baloney. Everyone knows it's baloney. They don't even support voter ID. Forget about citizenship verification. Voter ID, they're against that too. And of course, Judicial Watch has been addressing this issue time and time again, A, by educating people about what's going on, but B, by going to court to clean up the voter rolls. So the process to clean up the voter rolls is supposed to catch people like this. And if it's not being done, they won't be caught. And I don't mean caught in the sense of necessarily, oh, you caught them in a crime. They get a card saying, hey, you didn't vote, and someone recognizes that, oh, you know why I didn't vote? It's because I'm not a citizen. I shouldn't even be registered. Take my name off the list. I mean, we're suing in California to try to take nearly 900,000 names off the rolls of people who are still on the rolls after years, despite obviously having moved away or died. And you could be sure a number of those are not citizens. So if you clean up voter rolls, it's another way to ensure non-citizens aren't on the rolls and illegally voting. And Judicial Watch has cleaned up at least 6 million names. But as I was on WABC radio earlier this week, and I told them what the number of voters on the rolls who should be cleaned up, how many dirty names are out there nationally, and the hosts were shocked. Because I think the number is 24 million. 24 million names need to be cleaned from the rolls. So there are a few things that need to be done. We need to clean the rolls. We need legislation to ensure only citizens are voted, a system that has teeth behind it. And we need to have voter ID. And as the president rightly insists upon for the Save America Act, significantly restrict mail-in balloting, because it's easier to vote illegally, and knowingly so, if you don't have to show up. All you have to do is sign something and just get the paperwork in. That makes fraud a lot easier. And as the president highlighted last week, there were schemes afoot by the Chinese, according to intelligence, to provide driver's licenses so that Chinese operatives could vote in our elections. We're not sure what ever happened with the scheme. And of course, on top of that, the Chinese have 220 million voting records, which also places all your votes at risk. So forgive me for thinking this is a crisis. And of course, it's not like I told you so, in the sense that, you agree with me on this. We've been in this fight together for decades. We need better election integrity. Our elections are at risk. Based on what the president has released, based on what New Jersey has disclosed, I have serious concerns about the legitimacy of the midterm elections, at least in the eyes of voters. I mean, does it mean the elections will be stolen? Does it mean people will win who shouldn't have won and people will lose who shouldn't have lost because of voter fraud? No, that doesn't mean that. It means we've got a system in place that people can't trust anymore. And not because they're paranoid, not because they're crazy, but because of evidence like this. It's front and center. I mean, you go into a bank and they don't track your numbers. They don't ask for your ID. They don't ask any questions. They don't give you receipts. You might say, well, how can I trust what this bank is doing with my money? It's the same thing with voting. Your vote should at least be secure as a check deposit, don't you think? Just incredible. And of course, here in our nation's capital, non-citizens vote. And we uncovered a few years ago that they seem to be voting in federal elections. They were supposed to only be voting in local elections because that's, quote, legal. And non-citizens includes illegal aliens. And I kind of rehashed it because it's important to look at this. We had this information that was suppressed. 113 foreign nationals voted at the 2024 presidential primary in Washington, D.C. It's a national scandal. It's an insult to every American voter. And depending on the circumstances, may be a violation of federal law. And we uncovered that. Not Congress, who's responsible for that in the end. The fact that there are non-citizens voting in our nation's capital is purely with the sufferance of Congress, because Congress has ultimate oversight. Incredible developments. I know we got a war going on, so people get distracted from that, but of course the media isn't distracted by the war. They just don't want to have this material out there. They tried to suppress the information about the foreign threat to our elections last week, and New Jersey blew it all up for them. And so now they're going to change it into the President Trump weaponizing this issue, when in simple measure, he's simply trying to enforce the law. But I would encourage the administration to be more aggressive. Send the FBI to Trenton now. You know, one of the worst political operatives the nation has been saddled with recently is Jack Smith, appointed by Merrick Garland, the Biden gang leader at the Justice Department, to try to destroy President Trump and rig the election to keep Biden, or in the end Kamala Harris, in the presidency. Now, Jack Smith was notorious for his abuses of power, not only during the Biden administration, but during the Obama administration. So, of course, Jack Smith was also in the Obama Justice Department during the IRS Tea Party scandal. Remember, they were suppressing all the Tea Party groups and Republican groups generally to help President Obama maintain and retain and expand power. Jack Smith was trying to actually think of ways to put people in jail, as Lois Lerner was suppressing these same people. So they wanted not only to suppress them using the IRS, they wanted to jail them using the Justice Department, and Jack Smith was around pushing that, and Judicial Watch was in large measure responsible for uncovering that. So we talked about recently that Jack Smith was stealing the text messages. I know that they're going to argue the word stealing. In my view, was stealing the text messages of dozens of members of Congress. And he and his people were going through them. And according to the House Judiciary Committee, it looks like he lied in talking about his spying on Congress. And they referred him to the Justice Department for potential prosecution. So this is the setup for the letter. I have the letter here. The Committee on the Judiciary writes to refer strong evidence that appears to show Jack Smith, former special counsel, knowingly made false statements during his December 2025 deposition. And then it goes on to describe how the investigators for Smith and the Biden gang at the DOJ generally unconstitutionally subpoenaed phone records for over a dozen Republican members of Congress and obtained gag orders to prevent the members from knowing that the Biden-Harris administration had obtained these records. In May of 2022, investigators in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, that was under Biden, began seeking subpoenas for members' phone records because these members spoke with certain executive branch officials. In August, the FBI and DOJ Office of Inspector General agents, Inspector General, by the way, they're supposed to be watching the DOJ, not participating in crimes with the DOJ, seized Representative Scott Perry's cell phone, capturing a full image of the contents of his phone. In the months following Jack Smith's appointment, Smith's team proposed even over a dozen additional toll record subpoenas for Republican members of Congress, with Smith approving the vast majority of them. Mr. Smith and the Biden-Harris DOJ barely considered the Constitution as they seized these records of congressional Republicans. And to the extent they did, subject matter experts within DOJ warned that their subpoenas might be unconstitutional. However, instead of carefully considering the constitutional implications of their actions, these DOJ prosecutors obtained non-disclosure orders to try to prevent the members from ever learning they had seized the records. During a deposition on December 17th, the committee advised Mr. Smith that he was obliged to provide all necessary information that would make his responses truthful and to avoid half-truths or incomplete answers. So as the lawyers like to say, you can't omit material facts, an omission of material facts. Those of you who have kids understand what omission of a material fact is. You ask the kid, did they do X? And they deny it while leaving out key information. And so you can't testify under oath in using that methodology because that's perjury. The committee questioned Smith about the toll record subpoenas relating to the private records of members of Congress. The committee sought to understand in particular whether Smith or members of his team ever received or reviewed the contents of members' communications. During his deposition, Smith testified he did not receive the content of members' text messages. He testified, "Did you seek a search warrant for the content of any text messages from members?" From members? Yes. No, I don't recall that. Okay, it was just toll records, correct? Did the toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the contents of the phone calls? No. Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the contents of text messages? No. And as the committee points out, the responses provided by Mr. Smith gave the impression that neither Smith nor his team had access to the content of members' privileged text messages. We now know that this is false. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001, a witness commits a crime if the witness knowingly and willfully makes any material, false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation with respect to any investigation under review conducted pursuant to the authority of any committee of the Congress. New information obtained by the committee reveals how Smith likely circumvented key constitutional protections, including the speech or debate clause, to spy on members of Congress. In July of this year, July 14th, just a few weeks ago, the Trump DOJ exposed documents to the committee revealing that Smith's team obtained text messages of 44 members of Congress, implicating both Republicans and Democrats in both chambers of Congress that may have included privileged content. This information calls into question the completeness and accuracy of statements that Mr. Smith made under oath to the committee regarding his team's access to the content of members' text messages. And then the letter goes on to complain about the abuse of the Justice Department and Smith's operation in rummaging through these text messages. Congress is a separate branch of government. They're not above the law, but they have protections of the Constitution, under the Constitution, under what's called the speech or debate clause. And once you start getting into the operations of their offices and what they're doing as members of Congress, you run into these issues. Does it mean their constitutional protections can't be overcome? No. But it means you've got to kind of give them the chance, I would argue, to protect their rights and privileges. It's like stealing someone's attorney-client materials and not giving someone the chance to object. Here's the kicker. On August 21st, 2023, Senior Assistant Special Counsel Thomas Wyndham received an email from the General Counsel of the National Archives and Records Administration in response to the Special Counsel's Office June 2023 request for NARA to produce presidential records of the Trump administration. In that email, NARA attached 54 spreadsheets containing requested custodians' text messages from the White House phones. Wyndham then reviewed the text messages and proceeded to forward the content of the texts to fellow prosecutors at the investigative team. Wyndham, as a member of Smith's investigative team, should not have had access to the content of those text messages until they had been reviewed by a so-called filter team that's supposed to protect privileges. So what they did was they did an end run around the constitutional protections for members of Congress by getting their text messages that were sent or received that were uncovered as a result of being on White House systems. So if a senator sent the president's aide a text message, they got the text message through that backdoor way. Now, how is that consistent with Jack Smith's testimony? It's not. And that's why his responses and this evidence are being sent to the Justice Department. Mr. Smith knowingly and willfully made false statements to the committee during his deposition, the letter alleges. In light of the new information detailing that Mr. Smith's team did have access to content of members' text messages, and the fact that Mr. Smith made false statements regarding this information during his deposition, suggests that he willingly and knowingly made false statements to the committee. So is Justice Department going to do anything against Jack Smith? I don't know. I haven't done anything thus far, so maybe this is an opportunity to finally do something. And this is one of the reasons, in my view, that Republicans are facing challenges in the midterm elections, is because there's not much being done, or not enough being done, for accountability for the abuses of power that were resoundingly rejected by the American people when President Trump was elected. The Justice Department has not been moving fast enough on any of these issues, if at all. Congress is completely sleepwalking on them. I mean, this referral is good. But they don't treat it as the crisis it is. That's a fact. That's a fact. So it's good Congress referred Jack Smith for criminal investigation. It should be the beginning, the first of many referrals, or the first of many issues that should be investigated by the Justice Department. They tried to destroy our republic by jailing President Trump for opposing Biden and daring to question an election. And it wasn't just President Trump who was abused. It was all the president's friends and allies, party officials, lawyers, me, Judicial Watch. And there's been no accountability yet in a substantive way. There hasn't been. And Judicial Watch has been trying to expose what went on, and we have in large measure. There's more than enough information already out there to commence serious criminal investigations. Now, Joe Geneva in Florida is a special hire made by the Justice Department to investigate some of this down in Florida. But time's a-wasting. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I'm friends with Joe. I haven't talked to him about this specifically. But I'm sure he knows that he doesn't have all the time in the world. And I hope he's getting all the help he needs. So we'll see. But we'll keep on doing what we can do to expose what's going on. So we had some major victories in California in the last few years on a variety of issues. I already talked about election integrity, but California state, the state of California passed into law, the left did, a series of laws requiring private corporations, more or less, to put people on their boards of directors based on race, gender, and other improper quotas. So they wanted to codify, or they sought to codify, and did, and we challenged these laws, race, sex, and other discrimination in the selection of board members for private companies. And what Judicial Watch did is that we filed lawsuits on behalf of taxpayers to stop this woke discriminatory quota schemes that were being mandated against companies in California. And I think what's interesting is that I don't think any company sued to stop it because they were afraid of the left-wing mob. And so it was Judicial Watch who came in and did the heavy lifting. And we won. We had 2 courts in California find these laws to be unconstitutional under California law, contrary to law. But California continues to spend taxpayer money to try to resurrect these woke quota schemes. And so as a result, Judicial Watch continues the battle. We filed this massive brief in court the other day, 87 pages, 87-page brief. Our lawyers worked for weeks on this, trying to defend the rule of law in California to prevent, in this specific case, a quota scheme from being resurrected as a result of an appeal that would require discrimination against men in the selection of board seat members. As the headline we know, let me get the press release up so I can show you the press release. California seeks to revive failed corporate board gender quota. Judicial Watch announced today it filed a 90-page brief in the California Court of Appeal defending a California trial court ruling striking down Senate Bill 826, SB 826, the state's controversial law requiring publicly held corporations headquartered in California to meet government-imposed gender quotas in their boards of directors. So obviously we encouraged the Secretary of State's appeal to be knocked back and to stop and ensure that taxpayer money isn't spent to implement or enforce the law because it violates the California's Constitution. The brief urges the court, as I say in the release, or as we say in the release, to uphold the lower court's decision permanently enjoining California Secretary of State from spending taxpayer money to implement or enforce the law because it violates California's Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. And this was not an easy victory. Our team was out there for a month of trial. Senior government officials in California were required to testify. You had experts on both sides, providing information to the court. As we say in the brief, after 27 days at trial, 16 witnesses, 174 exhibits, and a trial transcript that spans over 8,500 pages, California Secretary of State was unable to convince the trial court that the gender-based quota satisfies one of the toughest standards the law imposes, strict scrutiny. The law has multiple failings, not the least of which is that it was never intended to remedy alleged patterns and practices of discrimination in the board selection processes of some 625 publicly held corporations headquartered in California. We filed this case back in 2019. Law was passed in 2018, and we shut it down. We won that trial. The law was sold to the legislature as a way to increase women's representation on corporate boards, if not achieve gender parity, and therefore boost the California economy and protect taxpayer shareholders and retirees. Because gender parity, economic benefits, and protecting taxpayer shareholders and retirees have never been compelling government interests under strict scrutiny, the Secretary needed another justification for the law when it was challenged in court. But because the legislative groundwork for a remedying discrimination compelling state interest had not been laid and never could be laid, that effort failed. It should have come as no surprise that the Secretary was unable to defend the law's gender-based quotas despite having every opportunity to do so. So this is my layman's understanding or translation of what the brief says. So strict scrutiny means if you're going to engage in discriminatory conduct as a government or require such conduct, it has to be really directly tied to discrimination, a remedy for discrimination that's been shown and very narrowly tailored. So, if you get fired because of your race, you get hired back and you get the money. Or they find that applicants for a certain job were thrown out. The applications were thrown out on the basis of race. They say, okay, well now you've got to consider them, and so there's that's what I mean by you can consider race in the context of a remedy for absolute discrimination. Saying you want more women on boards because you like it, because it makes us feel good, because it's good for business. That's not allowed under the law. That's no basis to start discriminating against men in favor of women in the selection of board seats. And as I said earlier, the businesses were willing to let this happen because they didn't want to fight the Borg. The left Borg, as I call it. It's a Star Trek reference. Look it up. And it was Judicial Watch that came forward with our brave taxpayer clients to take this on. And in a fierce battle in trial, win. So to be clear, there was no discrimination to remedy. As we highlighted at the trial, the number of women on the boards of California's publicly held corporations was increasing before the passage of the law. So there wasn't discrimination against women. And as we say, she makes no effort, the Secretary of State does, to show that the law was designed as nearly as possible to restore the victims of specific discriminatory conduct to the position they would have occupied in the absence of such conduct. Meaning they couldn't have, there was no woman who came forward and said, I could have been on that board but for my gender. because it wasn't happening. Indeed, the lack of any effort to limit the benefits of the scheme to those who actually suffered from specific discrimination will be fatal to the scheme. Meaning the quota would end because there's no one they could help. SB 826 plainly is a quota and a rigid one. The Secretary's own expert described SB 826 as a quota. One legislative report called it essentially a quota system for private corporation boards. Quotas are illegal in most every measure. And the state, in pursuing this, they weren't involved in discrimination. The evidence was presented they were involved in discrimination. There was nothing to remedy. No quota was necessary. And here's what I said about it in our press release. California continues to waste taxpayer dollars defending the indefensible, an unconstitutional gender quota scheme imposed on corporations that only serves to help corporations virtue signal about hiring women for their boards through government-mandated quotas. The trial court correctly concluded that the state failed to satisfy the demanding constitutional standards required for government discrimination based on race. The Court of Appeals should affirm the ruling and reject California's attempt to rewrite the purpose of the law after losing a trial. So this isn't the only lawsuit we have. I talked about the other lawsuits. So they passed the gender quota law, and then they passed another law that expanded the quota system to include race, ethnicity, sexual preference, and transgender status quotas for corporate boards. So I wouldn't say doubled down. This is, it's just beyond belief that they would think they could get away with this. So the first gender quota law was passed in 2018. They followed up with the max quota law to include all these other classifications that are improper to mandate discrimination on the basis of in 2020. And in 2022, we won again. The Superior Court issued a ruling and an opinion striking down the bill, thanks to Judicial Watch's lawsuit, and granting a permanent injunction prohibiting the Secretary from spending taxpayer money on the unconstitutional law. So I suspect that fight's going to go on for a bit too. So this highlights how your Judicial Watch is when it comes to like constitutional civil rights, one of our nation's preeminent watchdogs, or guard dogs, really. I mean, you have the state of California mandating this crazed quota scheme or schemes foisted onto private corporations, publicly traded. So if you are an investor in a corporation, you're in California, you would have been impacted by this more directly. And it was a brazen embrace of discrimination. I'll say it once, I'll say it again. The left endorses discrimination. They believe in it. They use it. They will go to court to protect it. And they will discriminate against you if you are the wrong classification of sex, race, etc. In Evanston, Illinois, we've got this class action civil rights lawsuit to stop a reparations scheme that gives out money based solely on race. There's other factors. You have to be a resident or have a family member who is a resident of the town during a certain period. But you don't have to prove any discrimination. You just have to check the racial box and you get the $25,000. A similarly situated white doesn't get $25,000. Justice Department has followed our lead and is joining or seeking to join that lawsuit. So despite all of the noise you hear about how oh, the left is nervous or about and moving away from DEI and these woke schemes. They're not. California is fighting us tooth and nail in court to mandate government discrimination or enforce discrimination against people on the basis of sex. Evanston, Illinois, giving out money based on race. And again, it's Judicial Watch taking the lead on both of these. In California, the biggest companies in the world didn't want to take it on. The little old Judicial Watch did, David versus Goliath, and we won. So thank you for your support. Let's hope the courts uphold this. I'll keep you updated. So I hope you've seen already, if you haven't, you should, our new video documentary on the TWA Flight 800 disaster. It's now over 30 years since the plane went down off the coast of Long Island, and the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, concluded it was the result of a fuel tank failure. Some sort of spark supposedly magically caused the fuel tank to ignite gases and explode the plane. That pretty much anyone serious about anyone who had serious knowledge about the operations of airliners rejected out of hand. And then the CIA issued a video, which was incredible in and of itself, pretending that everyone who saw something streak towards the plane and blow it up didn't see what they saw. Just incredible interference. I can't believe the CIA was allowed to do it, and it was accepted. And so we've had some questions about that issue. The video raises the questions, and here's a preview of the special Judicial Watch documentary featuring my colleague Chris Farrell on TWA Flight 800.
Not a missile.
I've had people say to me, "Why do you care about this? It's 30 years ago."
Caught my eye, a streak of light heading up to the sky.
The basic concept, a small amount of fuel in the center fuel tank could be ignited by a, quote, spark of unknown origin, was just unbelievable to anybody that knew anything about the way things work on airplanes.
And we had photos before they did the reconstruction as the wreckage came into the hangar. They altered the evidence to make it look like there was no internal damage caused by an external force.
Witness 73, she gives a second interview in which this time she admits she was drinking Long Island iced teas. Maybe she didn't see exactly what she saw. She goes, "Well, first of all, Jack, I don't even know what a Long Island iced tea is." And I said, "Could it have been another drink?" She goes, "I don't drink." They had made up a second interview for her.
230 people were killed that night in a very violent way.
So if you haven't watched the documentary, I want to break the news that the documentary breaks for you directly here as well, because we weren't just, as you'll see in the documentary, just interviewing folks who knew what was going on, had done their own independent investigations and had questions. But we did our own separate Freedom of Information Act investigation, and we got startling documents from the FBI that raised questions about the conclusions that it was an accident. An FBI New York field office electronic communication was issued on July 19th, 1996, just 2 days after the explosion of TWA Flight 800 on July 17th, 1996. The 4-page document was sent with immediate priority to the FBI director, all field offices, all legats, titled Explosion of TWA Flight 800, 29 miles southeast of Hampton, New York, July 17, 1996. So if you take a look at the document and scroll down to page 4, and here it is. FBI headquarters. There you see. I'm going to highlight it here. Maybe I can highlight it. Can I highlight it? Yeah. FBI headquarters is in receipt of faxes generated from Cairo claiming credit. Huh. So I thought there was no potential terrorist involvement. Here there's information that there was terrorist involvement. Now, how was it resolved? We don't know. That's why we have a pending request, or the request parts of which still need to be fulfilled. "230 people died on the plane. Everyone on the plane died. And here we have information that the FBI was getting, claims of responsibility from, quote, Cairo. As I noted earlier, the official explanation for TWA Flight 800, the crash of it, includes a controversial CIA animation that concludes the middle fuel tank was somehow ignited and caused the crash. The CIA production dismisses the accounts of dozens of witnesses who saw a streak of light rise up to the plane before it exploded. And some of that is disclosed in this FBI document. Independent investigation reveals that an individual on Long Island residing in the vicinity of the crash site who, while out on a routine walk, observed what he described as a fireworks-like object ascend into the air. He observed a white puff emerge and then break in two, generating a fireball. Look, he's describing a missile attack. Interview with a defense intelligence agent states that a shoulder-fired rocket known as a man-pad would function consistent with this eyewitness account. So I'm calling on Secretary Duffy, the head of the Transportation Department, to direct the National Transportation Safety Board to reopen the investigation into the crash of TWA Flight 800. Similarly, the Justice Department, the FBI, and other responsible agencies should reevaluate the conclusions of the CIA at the time that it was just an accident. The CIA issued a propaganda video, and that's the most charitable interpretation of it, trying to tell hundreds of witnesses that they couldn't believe their own eyes. You'll see this in the documentary. Now, I recognize it was 30 years ago, but this is another example of a significant potential national security event being mishandled, in my view. I mean, is it possible it was an accident? Of course it was possible it was an accident. In fact, it might have been likely it was an accident, but the explanation is not sufficient. So there are two issues. If the explanation's wrong, there still could be a danger to the public in terms of accidental issues, meaning there's something related to plane travel that hasn't been figured out yet in terms of safety issue. Or there could be a national security issue and there needs to be justice done, meaning it was taken down by a terrorist attack or something else. I know others have suggested maybe the Navy accidentally fired something. I don't know about that either. But I do know, based on the CIA's weird involvement, there's something fishy here. There's something fishy here. I know people are interested in JFK. I know people are interested in all sorts of other so-called conspiracy theories, which, as you know, is a denigration of legitimate questions people have that may or may not have been answered by evidence out there, but that should be treated seriously by responsible public officials. And so this isn't Judicial Watch saying something's weird here. This is the FBI document saying something's weird here. So I encourage you to watch the video and share it with your friends and family. And we'll let you know if we find out anything else unusual about this event 30 years ago that took the lives of 230 innocents. So I love about, I say this all the time, what I love about Judicial Watch. Let me count the ways, right? I'm the president of Judicial Watch. You would think I'd love us. But as a citizen, I try to be objective. And I think you probably agree with me. I just love that Judicial Watch just is into everything. If there's an issue floating around out there that is concerning to the rule of law, our constitutional system, government corruption, the government hiding something just for the sake of hiding it often, we are usually there asking questions, filing lawsuits. And not only on so-called small issues, but on big issues. And one of the biggest issues we faced as a country in recent years and recent decades has been the slow motion, and in the case of the Biden administration, the almost immediate invasion of the United States by millions of non-citizens, illegal aliens. And it's bad enough that the federal government, until this Trump administration, has dropped the ball in the case of prior administrations, or in the case of the Biden administration, actually encouraged the invasion, enabled the invasion. But when President Trump comes to clean it up, engage in the deportations, control the border, he secured the southern border. I think President Trump deserves a Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, for securing the southern border. He saved so many lives and heartache by doing that. That's for that reason alone, he should be getting medals and awards. So as he's trying to save the nation from the Biden invasion, secure our liberties under the law, and protect us from these illegal alien invaders, our elections, our lives, our property, you have the left, mostly Democrats, more than a few Republicans, oppose him. And in my view, engage in seditious activities designed to undermine the rule of law and enable this invasion and these invaders to stay. And we've never ignored it. Judicial Watch has been suing over these issues for years, and we just sued again in Arizona. Specifically, we sued the Arizona governor over the state's ICE Know Your Rights website, which is, again, designed to help illegal aliens unlawfully remain here in the United States. Judicial Watch announced that it filed an Arizona public records lawsuit against Governor Katie Hobbs' office for records regarding the costs and communications associated with her administration's launch of a Know Your Rights webpage portal advising Arizonans on interactions with immigration and customs enforcement and other federal law enforcement officials. So let's go to the press release. I'll show you what the lawsuit looks like. Katie Hobbs is, of course, a Democratic governor of Arizona. We're not suing her because she's a Democrat. We're suing her because her people didn't want to obey the law. So this is the lawsuit. Our lawyer out there, David Hoffa, filed it for us. Our guy in Arizona, Mark Spencer, retired police officer, great man, taking the lead on this request. Special action in her official capacity, special action against defendant Katie Hobbs in her official capacity as governor of the state of Arizona to compel compliance with the Arizona Public Records Law. And here's the request. General allegations. On or about February 4th, 2026, the Arizona governor's office posted a press release detailing the governor's concern that federal law enforcement was violating Arizonans' right to peaceful protest. California Governor Katie Hobbs announces Know Your Rights website to inform Arizonans of constitutional rights. So we said, give us the documents about this. We served the request for any Arizona governor's office documents to include but not limited to invoices, costing sheets, budget line items, competitive bidding forms, contracts, receipts, and/or MOUs, memorandums of understanding, indicating the cost of producing, posting, and/or maintaining the aforementioned knowyourrights.az.gov website and/or YouTube video. Any communications regarding the aforementioned press release and the website. Any documents or reports indicating when Arizonans have been denied the right to engage in peaceful protest by federal law enforcement. So what's the problem? What information do you have that the Trump administration is denying anyone their rights in Arizona? Unlawfully detained by federal law enforcement. Where does that happen? Unlawfully arrested by federal law enforcement. Unlawfully shot or killed by federal law enforcement. See, this is the big lie out there. They're pretending that what's happening is illegal on the part of the Trump administration, when in fact virtually all the controversies you see in the news are federal law enforcement reacting to illegal conduct by either illegal aliens or their enablers, the leftists trying to attack ICE and or otherwise obstruct justice. Any Arizona government communications regarding and or documents indicating the number of arrests, criminal investigations, and or convictions in Arizona by local and or federal law enforcement involving unlawful illegal aliens. Oh, now this is an interesting one. Tell us about the crimes illegal aliens have engaged in Arizona. Any documents or information provided to Arizonans if protesters come to their home and or places of worship and engage in criminal conduct. Any documents or information provided to Arizonans if they are victims of criminal conduct engaged in or perpetuated by illegal aliens. Any documents provided to Arizonans regarding their constitutionally protected rights to secure national borders. And we asked for their communications with the usual suspects in Arizona on these issues. So, yeah, tell us about this big problem out there that's basically smearing ICE, and tell us, Governor of Arizona, what you're doing to protect your citizens. That's a great FOIA request. Tell us about what you're doing to protect your citizens from the illegal alien invasion. And isn't it interesting, they don't want to give us any documents. $5 months we haven't gotten anything. 5 months. Governor Hobbs is using taxpayer resources to promote a website built around claims about federal law enforcement, yet her administration refuses to provide the public with basic information about its cost, development, and the record supporting its claims. So look. Oh yeah, and this isn't the only lawsuit we filed against Hobbs, I forgot. We filed one in October of last year regarding her office reportedly ordering state police and Arizona National Guard to withhold cooperation from federal immigration authorities. You know, more sedition. So it's not just here in Washington, D.C. are we battling for the rule of law. It's a state-by-state fight, and your Judicial Watch, more so than anyone else, at least in the private sector, I would submit, is the best able to, best equipped to provide you with the vehicle, at least vicariously, right? If you're supporting us or otherwise want us to do this work, to get the information that you and every other American is entitled to under state and federal law. Especially when these, in this case, these states are engaged in an effort to, I would say, advance the destruction of the country by allowing tens of millions of non-citizens unlawfully to reside here in the United States, and while also advocating for millions more to come across what they want to be, or what they want to be, basically to be open borders. So this is another great lawsuit by Judicial Watch. I just love it, and I think you probably love it too. We all love Judicial Watch, and if you love Judicial Watch as much as I do, I encourage you to support our work. Go to judicialwatch.org, judicialwatch.org, click donate, make a donation. If you already supported our work, it's another reason to give us more money. If you haven't, join our cause, join our movement. There's no one else doing what we're doing. With that, I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.